We're a charity on Holloway Road, just on Holloway Road, and we've been working for a while in the UK. We work across the UK and in London, and we're based on British Muslim values, and we work to empower people through dialogue, and we have a number of programmes that we operate in the country, and this is one of them, Success School. And this is a programme we've been running in this part of London and also here for the last few weeks now. And we invite people, quite high-profile people from different industries in to come and talk about how they've become successful in their field. And we hope to inspire other people to be successful in their field too. And so last week, a few weeks ago, we were talking to Nikki Clark, the hairstylist, and we spoke to people in the past like Cherie Blair and Shami Chakrabarti of Liberty. And next week we're going to have David Babulin in, and he is a writer, and he contributed to the script writing on Back to the Future, so he's really interesting. And that's actually on the 27th of January, so you should come and to that if you're around. And this week we're going to be talking to Andy Barrow, and Andy's a 3-time European winner and a Paralympic wheelchair rugby player, and he was playing for 10 years professionally, and then he stepped back, and now he's pursuing an international career in inspirational speaking, and that's what he's coming to talk about today. And he's a very inspiring figure, and we're going to talk about his path to success. So you've had a lot of success in your career, and I'm guessing that winning your first gold might have been a highlight in your career. Maybe you'd like to talk to us about your first big win and how that felt.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think when you start playing sport, you start for enjoyment, and then the way your enjoyment comes through is different, and as you get to the elite end, it's winning's the drug, winning's important. So to win that first European gold was an amazing honour. I think we did it in Belgium, against Belgium, and so a bit like Davis Cup a couple of weeks ago, and we scored the last goal with 4 seconds to go to take the victory. So really an amazing moment. That was kind of way back in 2003, but just that feeling of success on an international stage is amazing, and it's addictive. So it was a really, it's a moment I'll never forget. I can sort of talk you through quite boringly probably through the last couple of minutes of that game, but it's something that definitely spurs you on and makes you want to go on and achieve more and more.
Yeah. What felt like the moment when in your career, when did you feel like you really made it? What was the point where you felt like you'd broken into your sport?
I think that didn't come until the Beijing Paralympic Games in 2008. I was lucky enough to be asked to be captain in 2005, and I was first installed. I was quite a young captain, so it was really, leading that team was really a case of sort of turning up a dial and warming into it, making sure that I was out in front doing everything that I was asking any of my teammates to do. When you first start playing international sport, all you try and do is not look stupid, because it's the same game. We could, we'll analogise, we say a sport like football or rugby. We could all have a game of football here, and it would be the same game as they're playing in the Emirates just a couple of 100 yards down the road. The rules would be the same, except, there's less time and less space, so there's an absolute premium on your decisions. So consequently, you feel so rushed when you're at that top level. There is none of that time and space. But I remember having this moment when I was out in Beijing, and there's obviously lots and lots of people watching, thousands of people watching, and that doesn't happen to me very often. It's only in your Paralympic Games when you really draw crowds like that. But I just remember looking up and thinking, do you know what, I deserve to be here. This feels great. I feel like I am having an influence on this game, and that's kind of when I really felt like I'd kind of made it as an international player.
Now, talking about when you were younger, when did you first start getting into sport? Were you a lot younger?
Well, I played sport from as long as I can remember. I think I swam at 5 or 6 years old. I played football and cricket at that kind of age. I tried a bit of athletics, but I wasn't that fast and couldn't throw stuff that far, so I wasn't great at that. But I tried lots of different sports, and then when I went to senior school, that's when I started playing rugby. I was always a bit of a frustrated rugby player. I used to do all the stupid jobs in sports. I played goalie in football, wicketkeeper in cricket, backstopping rounders, and I played in the front row in rugby. So that kind of became my passion. So I tried lots and lots of different sports, but the sports I always loved were team sports. I love the team dynamic. I love the team aspect. I love that when we work in teams, amazing things happen and we achieve unbelievable things that we could never do as just individuals.
When you were starting out, how did your family and your friends support you? Was that crucial to your early success?
Always through my sport. You know, my mum and dad, you know, they were always fantastic and supported me in everything I did, and I feel so grateful for that, because I know that, you know, not everyone has both a mum and a dad that want to follow them and support them like that, you know. And, you know, my dad is a miserable old sod, right? He's, you know, he fusses and grumbles and moans and this and that. And, you know, I wouldn't say he's got loads and loads of strings to his bow or talents, but do you know what he's the best person in the world at? He's the best person in the world at being my dad. And he's followed me literally around the world, supporting everything I've done in all of my sports. You know, all the way through, as far back as I can remember, when I played football, then when I played rugby. I can't imagine what it would be like to, you know, to not have your mum or your dad or both have watched you play and seen some of your proudest moments and just been there supporting you. So that's, you know, that's just such a massive boost to a person's confidence.
When you were first starting out, how important was school to you, and how did that fit well with your sports?
Do you know, I was okay at school. I was not indifferent to it. That makes it sound like I didn't care about it. You know, I think I had the same as most people growing up. I didn't love school, but I didn't hate it. You know, I look back retrospectively at my education, and I'm really proud of the school I went to. You know, I was lucky enough to go to a grammar school, and I kind of like to stress that point because, you know, I got to go to a school where we aimed quite high because I passed a test, not because my mum and dad could afford it, and I think that's really important. But I did get into an environment where I was pushed, and I think that's just a really important part of your development. And I think I got a really good grounding. And although, you know, I think I just did my GCSEs at school and then left and went to go to college because I wanted to pursue my education in the way that I wanted to, rather than the way somebody else would tell me. I think it gave me a really good background in not just academia, but in all the core skills that go alongside that. You know, one thing I always feel grateful for is my articulation and my vocabulary. Now, you get that through practice. But also, it's really nice to be able to communicate. You know, it's such a key skill across life, through sport, everywhere.
You grew up in London,
Mm-hmm.
and how did you find London was in terms of being conducive to your success? Was it easy? Were there more opportunities here, do you think? Was it?
It's, you know, it's hard to quantify because I don't think, you know, I've never known anything else. And I did grow up in London. I grew up in suburbs of London, so I'm not going to sort of kid around and say, you know, I know the inner city or anything like that. I don't know. I grew up on the Kent borders. I was in Bexley and then in Greenwich. But, you know, being a Londoner, and I do regard myself as a Londoner, I think gives you, you know, a massive boost in your level of acceptance, in your understanding. You know, it's such an amazing city. We welcome everyone, and yeah, I do think there's way more opportunities here than anywhere else in the UK. And for me, you know, London is one of the best cities in the world, and I'm very proud to say I'm from here.
And you've travelled a lot with your career, but
Mm-hmm.
which were the highlights? Which places were the best places you've been to?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I'm lucky to have spent a lot of time. I got to play out in America, so I spent a winter in San Diego playing in California. That's a really nice part of the world. I've travelled all the way down to New Zealand. That was fantastic. I do like Asia because that is such maybe a polar culture to ours. So, you know, all around Beijing, when we're in Hong Kong and Singapore and Beijing itself, that was really fantastic because it was so different to here. And so, you know, I really like those kind of areas. But I've been lucky enough to go down to South America and do a lot of Europe as well. So I think sort of travelling gives you a great perspective on what's out there, and not only what's out there, but how good we got it here.
Yeah, that's true. I think you have a video clip which might be a great time to
Okay.
watch that. The Sandy
Yeah.
South Korea and a little taste of that.
Okay, yeah, so probably worth stressing as well that, when I talk about my sort of very early, I was up on my feet till about 17 years old, so that's when I talk about football, cricket, rugby, and then how's this guy doing that? He looks like he's sitting down a bit. So, when I was 17, I was injured in a game of rugby, and I found out about wheelchair rugby while I was completing my rehab in hospital. I had no idea Paralympic sport existed. I had no idea disability sport existed. So when I found out there were all these amazing other sports out there, that was a real boost to me and a boost to my confidence, a really hard time in my life. So I found this sport called wheelchair rugby. As a rugby player, I thought it sounded amazing. I asked about what the rules were. They said, we just kind of bash into each other. So apologies if this comes out loud. I'll just qualify that because we don't know how loud it's going to shoot through the pipes. But it's just a short clip. But if you've never seen it, this is wheelchair rugby. Okay, it's not going to come out loud at all. Brilliant. Okay, so these are some clips from a lot of different tournaments. The first is Beijing. So some clips from the Beijing Olympics here, some clips from the build-up tournaments to London, the test events that we hosted in Olympic Park, and some mock-ups that were actually used in the advertising campaign ahead of the 2012 Olympic Games. So this is only a short clip, but it gives you an idea of our sport. Very fast, very multi-directional. There is a contact element, ironically played by people who are actually very disabled. Not a lot of function going on at all there. Most of us have high lesion spinal cord injuries, or we are amputees and we have an impairment in all four limbs. So it's only a short clip, so that's done there. People always ask me if I'm in it, so I clip it here. Yes, that's me falling on my head in the video. So that kind of is wheelchair rugby. In a nutshell, it doesn't bear a lot of resemblance to rugby. You're looking at a 4-on-4 game played on a basketball court with a volleyball. To score a goal, you saw them carrying the ball over a line between the two cones. It's that simple. Those two cones 8 metres apart. You should score every time you have the ball. An average game of rugby over 4 8-minute quarters on a stopped clock. You'll score about 50 goals each in international. So those are the real simple basic rules. It gets a whole lot more complex after that, but obviously why we love it, the team element, the contact element.
That looks absolutely brutal, I must say. Have you had any horrendous injuries while doing this?
Nothing horrendous. I mean, I think what we do get primarily in wheelchair sports is overuse injuries. The chair, as you can see, that's the thing that takes all the beating. I've been through 11 of those chairs in my career. But when I talk about overuse injuries, your body, is obviously not designed for you to get yourself around using your arms. So we look at our shoulders, wrists, elbows. Those are the common areas where it might break down. I think after the Athens Olympics, I had some trouble with my AC joint, which is a little junction of joints at the front of your shoulder. So I had to have a lot of therapy, a few shots in that arm, but luckily avoided surgery. But I've also sort of blown out both elbows in the time, like got something like a bursitis or something, which is you can get an infection in your elbow where the sort of shock absorber in your elbow takes a bit too much of an impact. Luckily never had too much wrist trouble or any broken fingers or that, but that's kind of par for the course. Injuries come in any sport at the top level, at all levels for that matter. So in the grand scheme of things, nothing that couldn't be sorted.
What are the people like around you were like when you were performing, when you were playing? Were people good? Was there a lot of camaraderie, or would there be like difficult characters? How did you find that?
It's absolutely a combination. When a team is playing well, obviously, it's very easy. There's a tremendous sense of camaraderie. There's everyone's getting on, everyone wants to pull for the calls. You really find out about a team when they're not doing well, when they're losing. There are difficult egos. By the nature of sport, and certainly by the nature of Paralympic sport, the manner in which many of us arrived to the sport, you're going to get some awkward personalities, some people that want, that want to be at the forefront. I don't mind admitting that, I'm one of the bossy people as well. You take a team full of people like that, a team full of people that want to succeed, it is quite an art balancing all those egos, spinning all those plates, making sure that we all get on. But ultimately, the strength of a team is really, tested when it isn't doing so well. And, I had some fantastic people around me, not to say we didn't have some hard times and some difficult conversations, altercations. It's just part of the nature of the beast.
You were captain too. What was your approach to leadership? Were you a hard leader, or were you better with your team?
At first, I think you change your approach. I like to think I was sort of trying to get out alongside it all the while I was captain and understand myself what worked for the team. As I said, when I was first installed, I was very young. So that's not going to work. You're not just going to walk in as one of the youngest members of the squad and try and be that talismanic guy, follow me. It's not necessarily going to work. So I set about being the hard worker to begin with, and making sure that, I was the hardest working member of the team.
Yeah.
And I was always a bit of a diplomat, but, as we went through the years, I obviously maybe consciously asserted my authority on the team slightly more as the respect level for me grew. It's all about, about thinking about it and calculating it and just making sure you're keeping those plates spinning, you're keeping all the egos balanced, you know when to listen to people, when to tell people they should maybe stop speaking now, who to go to at the right time. There's so many different people. As I say, you do get your bossy ones like me, we just want to get it done. One of the key skills I had to develop was listening, was making sure that I paid attention to everyone. The people that took the counter view because they added some kind of colour and weight to an argument and inspired other people to really think about the situation. Maybe the people that didn't say anything at all until they said the most important thing in the whole meeting. So to tune in and pick that up. So, my style changed throughout, but I like to think that I sort of first led by example. I had an amount of diplomacy in me, but I knew when to cut it off and say, right, this is my decision, and not kind of shilly-shally around it.
Yeah. Now, what does sport mean to you as a subject? You've been playing for a long time. It's obviously a big part of your life.
So it's a wide-ranging question. Sport, it's done so much for me in my life in terms of taking me from somewhere that was quite a bad situation, and turning a real negative into a positive. And sport, it's the way we should get to test ourselves now in life. Not to get too political, but we should be able to just judge ourselves and our characters by sport rather than kind of fighting each other. And that's kind of where I would like to see sport stay. Obviously, at the elite end, there's money at stake. There's very driven people involved. But I would not want to politicise it too much, because sport should be an outlet. It should be something that we love to do. It should be a way that people meet one another and a way that people express themselves. A bit like art. It's kind of a physical version of art for me. I don't want that to sound a bit too airy-fairy. It's just, it's a great thing. It's a great pastime that's out there. But at the same time, it's not for everyone. Sport's kind of a bit of a polarising thing. You get people in a room, they'll either run towards sport or run away from it. So, it was a massive part of my life, and I learned a lot from it. A lot of skills that came back into my life directly from sport.
And yet there are a lot of barriers to sport. And I don't know what you would sort of say to that. I know we were talking before, this is something you work on quite a lot, but what's your opinion on that? Do you think that we have too many barriers to sport? Do you think that...
Yeah, I think we should always be working to take those barriers away and enable anyone to, participate in sport on whatever footing it is they will. So things like Paralympic sport, are great for that, are great for breaking down barriers. Obviously, we want to see, more equality within women's sport, the barrier of the whole LGBT angle, the fact that people in some walks of life can't be who they really want to be. They have to kind of live behind a mask in order to compete in the sport that they do. That shouldn't be happening. So I think we need to work as hard as we can to just make sport as pure as we possibly can. That's why you see a lot of anger in the papers around, around the use of performance-enhancing drugs. You see a lot of anger, obviously around the whole, the corruption side of sport. Because for me, sport should be something we do, certainly at the base level, at the grassroots level, to escape from some of the more serious things in the world. It can be used to bring people together over those issues, but, when we first start sport, it should be fun.
Yeah.
It's got to be fun because, if you're going to rise, if you're going to become elite in sport or have aspirations to go anywhere, you need to fall in love with it first.
Have you experienced much, prejudice or discrimination in your career in sport? Is that something that's been a barrier for you?
Not at all in sport and very rarely in life. I'm very thankful that society maybe had advanced to a point where I've suffered very little discrimination through disability. Generally you encounter ignorance, and I say that in the best possible sense. People maybe killing you with kindness or just not understanding maybe some of the etiquette around disability. So I feel very grateful to the people who maybe went before me, people that were had disabilities before society was as permissive as it is today, people that did get discriminated against and stood up and went, you can't do that, you can't be like that. I feel very grateful that the world today is like it is, and I feel in a way that I want to give something back and be a part of that whole positive role model thing. So I make sure that we keep that culture of acceptance.
Yeah. And it seems that in the last few years, maybe with the rise of social media, people are becoming more publicly accepting of sexuality, of race, religion, and also disability. And is that something that you have noticed, and do you think that's something that's maybe positively affecting sport, disability in sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few key dates in time for me. I think the Sydney Paralympic Games in the year 2000 was a great occasion. Whenever you get an Olympics hosted in a country of sport lovers, it takes it to a different level. Australia is undoubtedly a country of sport lovers. I'm not saying that Greece or China isn't, but Australia and the UK, we definitely are. And in Sydney, what happened was that I think the shift change went from Paralympics being about disabled people having a go to athletes who happen to have a disability. And then building from that into London, what you saw was then the rise of the first Paralympic superstars, really, because there weren't that many iconic people around. And I remember a colleague of mine, Adi Adepitan, saying that all he wanted for London was for people to be able to recognise and mention Paralympic athletes on the street. So what you get a situation of, we have Paralympic role models now, and that's really, really important because I'll just draw you one example. If you take a young disabled person, say a wheelchair user, there's no problem with he or she having a role model like maybe a David Beckham or a Serena Williams. But with the best will in the world, they cannot possibly stand up out of that wheelchair and knock a 40-yard free kick in or serve an ace. What they can do is maybe get in their wheelchair and be as fast as David Weir or Hannah Cockcroft. So I think it's really important for them to have role models that they can actually physically emulate. Now beyond that, what happened in London was you were getting kids, able-bodied kids, that were running around going, look at me, I'm Johnny Peacock, or look at me, I'm Hannah Cockcroft, look at me, I'm David Weir. And that was fantastic as well. We transcended. Also, what it did on, not a darker note, a more realistic note, it made people realise that just because you're disabled, it doesn't make you a saint. And that's a really important message. Just because you're disabled, just because you're black, just because you're Muslim, just because you're gay or straight, or a woman or a man, doesn't make you a nice person. There are not nice people in all those sections of society. And we saw, maybe in one or two important cases, how normal these people were. There's a very famous thing about a cyclist called Jody Cundy, who was an amputee cyclist, and he got a bad call off of the officials in his sport, and he kind of went off a little bit on the telly, had a little bit of a foul-mouthed outburst. And then apologise for it. But that made people realise, wow, this guy's just given 4 years of his life. He's not perfect. He obviously cracked at that moment, because he saw a lot of his hopes and dreams dashed a little bit. And then more seriously, you get a case that's come back into the public eye, the Pistorius case. We're not above that, but that for me is another level of equality. You want to ask for equality. You don't want lip service. You don't want to be. You don't want preferential treatment because of the colour of your skin or because of your disability. You just want across the board. And I think that is what's happening. We get funded. It's a massive long answer, isn't it? Apologies. We get funded by the government. They pay for us to train. We spend your tax going training. So that's fantastic, but there is an onus within that, and we should be held accountable for that. Just because I'm a Paralympic athlete, I want the plaudits if I play well. But, why shouldn't there be a scathing review about me in the paper if I have a terrible game? So I think you want equality across the board.
Yeah. When you were younger, who were your role models?
As a rugby player, I grew up with maybe like the 1991 rugby team, but that's a long, long time ago. Maybe people like your Brian Moores, your Will Carlins. Obviously, when we won the World Cup, a big role model. It's an obvious one is Johnny Wilkinson. That was a man who had not only great talent, but an extreme work ethic and an amazing amount of humility. And I always admired that in him. I admire any Olympic or Paralympic athlete because I understand the work it takes to get to where you are. So really anyone that has achieved on that kind of platform. But if I had to put it down to one person, I think Johnny Wilkinson's a good role model to have.
And within your sport now, today, who do you think what are the names, who are the people, the role models that the people in the room should remember and take note of?
Within wheelchair rugby, I think there's a guy who currently I would say is the most dominant player in the world. He's called Riley Batt. He plays for Australia. It's quite a good story. They found him. He has he's had his disability from birth, and he is an above the knee amputee. So he's just all kind of top half. They kind of found him in the suburb of Australia, kind of getting around on a skateboard because he didn't want to use a wheelchair. They introduced him to wheelchair rugby, and over the course of the last 15 years, he's become the most dominant player on the planet. Within our sport as well, within the UK, there is a young guy called Jim Roberts who's really on the up and up. He acquired his disability. He contracted meningitis in his teens, and he lost his legs, and he lost some different. Meningitis is not a very nice thing. Bits of you fall off afterwards with the whole blood poisoning and septicemia. I can't put it any nicer than that. So he lost a certain amount of his hand as well. He's really up and coming. Outside of wheelchair rugby, we have our sport is a mixed sport. You would have seen a woman in the video called Kylie Grimes. She played with us on the London squad. So women and men play side to side in our game. Women have a half-point concession within classification. We could do a whole chat on classification. It's a whole big thing. The point is we make the playing field even for women, and so they play alongside us. But Kylie has since moved from wheelchair rugby to athletics. She recently competed in the IPC Championships in Doha. She'll be one to watch in Rio next year.
Cool. So you retired from wheelchair rugby a while ago, and a lot of sports people, they find that difficult to retire from competitive sports. How did you find that? How did you find changing totally different field?
I was very lucky because whenever I speak to groups of people, I talk about learning three things, one from each of my Paralympic Games. I learned how to work hard in the build-up to Athens. I learned how to then channel that and really maximise that and be smart during the Beijing Olympics. And during the London Olympics, I found a bit of balance. For all this talk of sport, it's done a tremendous amount for me, but it's just a game. And then you step back out of that into your everyday life. So I was lucky. I met my long-term partner during the build-up to London, and we got married afterwards. So that was a big thing, and it was time for me to retire. So because I was ready and my retirement wasn't forced, I thought it was a relatively easy transition. I believe that being an athlete is an absolute privilege and you should do it 100% or not at all. That's just me. And as soon as you even ask yourself the question, should I carry on, you probably know what the answer is already. There was always something nagging away at me. I was a 17-year-old boy when I broke my neck. I had a Saturday job in Woolworths. Do we all remember Woolworths? I was a Saturday kid in Woolworths and Marx's. So there was something nagging away at me that I'd never actually had a real job. And I wanted to prove to myself and others that I could run a business and that the knowledge that you'd accrued over a career of being an athlete was a commodity that could be passed on. So, that was something I was really kind of passionate about because of what I did, because of the fact that I was captain for a while, did a lot of media work, chaired 1,000 meetings. Speaking was a logical way for me to go. And I really enjoy the challenge, and that's what I'm kind of throwing myself into now. So the transition wasn't too difficult for me.
You're an ambassador for Team London. Do you want to talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great one. Team London is the Mayor's volunteering initiative set up as part of what's seen as the London 2012 legacy. One of the big things that came out of London, it made volunteering cool again. And it made people realise that volunteering didn't have to be entirely altruistic either. You could actually have fun doing it. You shouldn't feel guilty for having fun because you're doing a good thing ultimately. And we set about making sure that young people could see that, and we set about making sure that we empowered young people to be agents of change within the capital. And so a lot of what I do with Team London is in an ambassadorial capacity, reinforcing that, but then much more in a hands-on sense of actually upskilling those young people to give them the skills they need to be able to go and make those changes. So whereas Team London themselves might implement programs for them, potentially funding, I go in and I talk to them about a lot of what we've spoke about today, about teams and about how best to get on in teams, how to be the best individual you can within a team, how to maximise maybe your communication skills through your own levels of confidence, learning compromise, learning how to operate effectively in a team, because teamwork is such a key skill in life for employability across the board. We all work in teams every single day. So to be able to work well in a team is huge. And then you add the layer to that of these young people are empowered to really speak up about the issues they care about within their city, within the boroughs they live in, and even the areas of those boroughs that they live in. And then hopefully we can set them on the path of actually changing stuff. We speak a lot about that word up there, the whole inspirational thing. Inspirational, it's kind of a nice tagline. Inspirational's great, people might feel inspired, you go away leaving with a good feeling. If you don't do anything with that energy, it's going to dissipate. You need to do something. So over and above saying, I care about this, I care about that issue, go and do something about it. And that's we're putting these young people in a position to do that. So not only is that message coming from the top down, it's coming from the bottom up, and that's really, really crucial, I think.
You work on other projects with young people. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your 3 C's.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned a few of them. I was lucky enough to be sponsored by a corporate organisation when I played, and they're an insurer in the city. And I retired and went back and said, is there anything I can do? At the time they were setting up a charitable foundation, and they said, is there anything you can do in terms of setting up a project? So I said, okay, what are your passions? They said, we want to work with young people with challenges. So I said, okay, and then I sort of came to the conclusion that everyone has a challenge. Most young people have challenges, and they do base around those 3 C's. So I work backwards from teamwork. We have to compromise to work in a team. In order to compromise, we have to find out what one another want, or what they need, or what skills they have. To do that, we have to have communication. It's a key driver for teamwork. And in order to communicate effectively, you've got to have confidence. You've got to practice. Confidence comes out of practice. So I think we were speaking about sport before. Do something enough, you get good at it. As you can see, I think I'm all right at speaking because I like the sound of my own voice. I seem to practice quite a lot. So what I do is I create team building days for young people that the employees of that insurer then volunteer on as part of the company's corporate social responsibility. So I work with a couple of different delivery partners one in London called the London Business Alliance, and we go into schools in some of the inner city boroughs, and we work with them, building that confidence, and and really getting out alongside young people's curriculums with those soft skills, with those communication skills. Because the way I see it, what's the point in learning so much at school? You come away with a wealth of knowledge. If you then can't communicate that, articulate that, get that across, sell your strengths, what's the point? You may as well not have learned it in the first place. So that's kind of what I'm passionate about.
How do you define success?
I could go on, but I'm going to do a short answer for once. Success is what makes you happy. That's that simple. If you come out the end of your life, or the end of your career, or whatever, and you're happy with what you've done, you're successful. For me, that's it.
When you were younger, do you think now that you always knew that you had that desire to succeed personally or publicly?
It's hard to say. I'm not sure that I did. I can tell you that I always had that ability because all of you have that ability. Okay? We can learn to do anything we want to. If we practice hard enough at it, we are going to get to be able to do it. So, maybe I didn't understand, where I wanted to go. I always knew I was quite a confident person. I always knew I had a relatively positive outlook. What key events in my life did was they gave me perspective. I speak about all of my sporting achievements. Still, to me, my greatest achievement is regaining my independence after having a life-changing accident. And that experience, through practice, furnished me with a lot of skills to then go on and be an elite sportsman, which then furnished me with a lot of skills to go on and be a speaker and a mentor. So I think you are a bit of a product of your environment where that's concerned.
So obviously mindset is an important part of success. Have you encountered people that you think maybe have had the wrong mindset and as a consequence they haven't been as successful as they could have been, or vice versa maybe?
I think it might not be, as blunt as having the wrong mindset, but, not having it aligned with their goals. That positivity. The thing about your mindset, the thing about your attitude is it's really a starting point for everything. An attitude, especially because we're all from London, has got quite a negative connotation to it. More often than not you hear it attached to a sentence like, oh, you've got bad attitude, you give me attitude, this, that. Your attitude's yours and you can change it at any time. Everyone's mum or dad turned around and said, oh, you got out of bed the wrong side today. Just get back in, get out the right side. My coach used to say you can change your attitude like a t-shirt at any time. So you can have that positive mindset. There's a lot of things that go into it, like your well-being is maybe key within that, and your well-being comes on 3 different levels, and I think that's what the government tells us anyway. It comes on a physical level, a mental level, and a social level. If you get that in line, and it comes back to that word, that happiness, that's really going to affect your attitude. If you wake up happy, you are naturally probably going to be a bit more confident. You're going to believe you can do more things. But ultimately, it kind of has to come back to you changing your attitude and being someone that says yes. And moreover, being someone that says yes and, not someone that says yes but. If you say yes but, you're just throwing barriers up for yourself.
Would you change any decisions that you've made in your careers? Anything that you would have done differently now looking back?
I'm not sure that I would. I think you can talk about maybe small things, but they're quite minor in the grand scheme of things. The big one I always get asked is, would you change being in a chair? And I wouldn't, because if you were to take me back to the night before my accident and say, okay, so tomorrow you're going to go to a rugby game, you're going to break your neck, you're going to spend 5 months in hospital, you're going to have to learn a lot of stuff all over again, you're going to put your life on hold for a little bit, it's going to be a hard time, it's going to be difficult, but then you're going to find this sport, you're going to get good at this sport will take you around the world, it will mean that you play for your country, it will mean you captain your country, it will mean you get to meet fantastic people, it will mean you get to go and meet the Queen, you'll win medals, and then you'll go on and you'll have a career as a speaker, and you'll get to speak to young people, and you'll get to do a job you love, or not, or just don't turn up to that game. I think I'd still turn up to that game. There's things in our lives we can't change, and things we can. I can't change the fact that I broke my neck. I can change entirely how I reacted to it. I think when we think like that, that's when our possibilities open up rather than closing in front of us.
What are you proudest of in your life or in your career?
Do you know, in my career I was proud of being able to captain a team and being able to captain a team for a long time, you know, and steer the ship and get us to a good point. You know, I'm proud in my career now that I've been able to transition into a new area where I'm a novice rather than having left an area where I'm an expert. And the fact that, you know, I hope I'm learning every day. I'm proud that I don't give up, that I try and keep practicing, and that I have enough leniency with myself that when I have a bad day in terms of my career, I can say, do you know what, you know, I can't change that. I can go forward. And obviously, as before I mentioned, I'm proud of getting my life back on track after being injured.
If you hadn't gone into sport, what do you think you would have gone into?
Oh, let me just grab a drink. If I hadn't gone into sport, what I wanted to do was I went to work in tourism. I wanted to go and see the world, but then as an 18-year-old, I mean, I think retrospectively, I'm putting a bit of a sugarcoat on it. I probably wanted to go and rep when I was an 18-year-old, and go and work in a Spanish bar or something. But I wanted to, you know, the point was I wanted to go away. I wanted to see a bit and see where my life went from there. I think that was maybe slightly idealistic and maybe slightly materialistic, because I think what actually would have happened, I'm an August birthday, so I wouldn't have I'd have left school before being able to kind of actually go and do some of those things. I'd have probably gone and got a job in town. I'd have probably gone and got a city job or something. I wasn't a maths whiz, but I was all right with numbers. I'd have probably done that and, you know, wound up in the rat race a little bit, really, and maybe been a person that I don't think I'd like as much as the person that I am now. So I think, you know, hurting myself gave me a good perspective, and it gave me more compassion. It gave me a real idea of the things that matter, hence the answer I gave around success. So it's, you know, I still have that thing that I'd like to see more and more of the world. Got to go and do it on a whistle-stopping wheelchair rugby, but, you know, it's kind of true what they say, you know, it is kind of hotel, sports hall, airport, pretty much that. Don't let that make you think that it's not a fantastic life. It's an awesome career, it's a privilege, but there are difficult aspects to it.
Now, this is my last question before you'll get the chance to ask Andy your own questions, so definitely do that. And what advice would you give to the room today, people starting out in their careers or changing their careers or changing their lives? What advice would you give to people just embarking on big life changes who might be a bit scared or not?
In worrying about being scared, I would say to you, what's the worst that can happen within careers? You know, I don't think there's, you know, I think what you need to do, the base of everything for me is that positive attitude, is being passionate about what you do. You know, if I can give you one bit of advice, don't do anything that doesn't make you happy. You know, I mean on a macro level, I don't mean like getting out of bed at 6 in the morning. That doesn't make me happy. But on a macro level, do something you enjoy. Follow your passion, because then hard work will come from that. And if you work hard, you will enjoy what you're doing even more. That is a positive cycle to get into. Don't be scared to change. If you start something and you don't like it, change it. You know, be proactive, don't be reactive. You know, you don't need to fit into anyone's mould. Everyone's got a different speed of learning. What's right for the person sat next to you might not be right to you, but it does all come back to having a positive attitude, working hard and doing things that make you happy.
I think we can all agree that's very inspiring, and we should maybe give a hand.
had your injury when you were 17,
Mhm.
and a year later you were playing wheelchair rugby.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty amazing that you managed to take that injury and continue that. I think if it had been myself, I may have resented the fact that that sport actually led to that disability. How did you overcome that?
I think it's really good. I think it was interesting the way we were talking about it earlier. I'm very lucky in the manner in which I had my injury. I had it doing rugby. I had it doing something I love, and it was nobody's fault. So for me, there was no guilt attachment to it. If I cross the road now, someone runs over me drunk, that's a whole maybe a whole different kettle of fish. That withstanding is still a situation you can't change. So you're in it. So the main driver for me, and instantly I think people don't give themselves enough credit. I think if you find yourself in that situation, okay, your independence is a powerful motivator. You know, to become independent again, I think, and the further I get away from my sporting career, the more I get into my speaking career, it's really about sort of crystallising these messages that are just floating around your head, pulling them down and being able to articulate them to people. I think your independence is maybe the second most powerful motivator you will ever come across. I think the first being maybe your survival. I was never going to die. That was never ever going to happen. Some people that do have spinal cord injuries, yeah, they were in life and death situations. That was never the case for me. But getting your independence back as 17 years old, you know, going to your first case conference, saying to them, I expect to be able to do pretty much everything I could before, and I expect my quality of life to remain the same, and watching some of the eyes go around that circle and thinking, well, here, because I am. That was really powerful for me, and I think if any of you, and obviously I don't wish it on you, if you find yourself in a situation like that, I think you'll be surprised at kind of what is within you when you have to do something. Because I could cry all the tears in the world and I would still be in a wheelchair, I would still not be able to work. That is something I can't change. But at 17 years old, I was damned if I was going to spend the rest of my life in a room, cry my eyes out about something I couldn't change. So I think that's a really powerful thing.
Sorry, we'll come back to you. Sorry.
Hi Andy. You said that your dad inspires you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody else that inspires you?
I think both my parents, I think my dad, because, he was kind of really there for me, but my mum made that possible as well. I have, lots of different role models. We spoke about Johnny Wilkinson within sport. I have role models within wheelchair rugby, names that won't mean as much to you guys, but I think you need to take your inspiration from a range of different people, and it can change on a day-to-day basis. If someone does something you think is cool, it's good for them to be your role model. So, is a lot of different people. It changes on so many days. I think you can take that energy. The thing about inspiration, it is energy. It's just that. So, and it's free energy because it's out there. All we have to do is kind of act on it. But yeah, I have a lot of sporting role models, and people in life, just so many that I sort of look towards, really.
Sorry.
Thank you. I found your talk really actually quite inspiring.
Thank you.
I have to go to a meeting now, but before I go, I just want to say that this thing about independence that you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and also what motivates you. On another level, I'm a teacher and I've been teaching for many years. And when my students first come in that first instant, and they're now
you.
very
Thank
much.
you. I think it's really important. I think it's really important if you have something like a role model tag. I think you have an onus. You're an ambassador. I'm an ambassador for Paralympic sport. I'm an ambassador for someone with a disability. I'm an ambassador for someone who has had quite a good education. I think it's our responsibility to really vindicate what you as educators do. Because with the best will in the world, I come in today, it's nice, I've got a cab here, I'm going to get a cab home. I'm going to see you guys, you all want to be here. I'm not like in the trenches. When I go into so many different schools, I think that, we must work, especially not to undermine or be counter to what an educator's messages are, to work with them and say, these guys are here every day. These guys have more knowledge that I can ever hope to imagine. They are giving you more in terms of your life education. Is a fraction of what they can give is what I'm trying to impart today. But just to say, these guys, these are some of your key role models in life. Your parents and your teachers. Really, your family and your teachers are, your biggest role models. Not just academically, but in terms of, a steer on what's right and what's not. So thank you for your
Thank you.
words.
Okay, we're going to stop for some refreshments now. We do have
Mhm.
a chance to have maybe a more informal chat with Andy for just a short while. But do come to our other success schools, our one in January. And if you want to tweet about us, do hashtag success school. And if you're interested in getting more involved with the Darwin Society, we're just on Holloway Road. You can come and volunteer, come to our events. So do search for us on Google. Thank you.
Thank you.